Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's lesson. Let's go over today's lesson objective. So today we will identify parallel and perpendicular lines. Let's go ahead and dive right into our lesson success criteria. We have two for this lesson. So the first one is that I can identify perpendicular lines, and the second one is that I can identify parallel lines. All right, let's go into our vocabulary and get into today's lesson. So our first vocabulary word for today is intersecting lines. So what intersecting lines means is we have two or more lines that meet at one point. So over here we have our two lines and they meet right here at this point right here, right? So they are intersecting. So these lines are intersecting because they meet at one point. They share one point. So those are intersecting lines. Now we have a special type of intersecting lines and they are called perpendicular lines. So perpendicular lines are lines that intersect and form a 90-degree angle at the intersection. So where these two lines meet right here, there should be a 90-degree angle. And 90-degree angles are angles that look kind of like a corner. So right here we see a 90-degree angle. It is a corner, right? So that is a perpendicular line. They have to form exactly 90 degrees to be called a perpendicular line. So these are special types of intersecting lines, perpendicular lines. All right, now let's go over a parallel line. So parallel lines are actually lines that never intersect. So they're never going to touch. So remember, lines go on forever, right? And so if two lines are parallel, they're never going to intersect, but they're going to be right next to each other. Or they're going to run right next to each other in the same direction. They're never going to cross, they're never going to meet, but they're going to keep going on forever and they're never going to touch. All right, now let's go into parallel lines. What are some examples of parallel lines? So parallel lines are, remember, two lines that are never going to touch. So if we have a line over here, and I'm going to try to make this as straight as possible. A parallel line is going to be going right next to it and it will never touch. Right? So they're just going to keep going on forever. So these are parallel lines. They're never going to touch. They're just going to keep going on and on and on and on and forever and never, ever, ever touch. If at any point, let's say the line goes like this, and they eventually touch, this is not parallel lines. So parallel lines are lines that will never, ever, 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 ever touch. Now let's go ahead and look at this in a shape. So over here we have a rectangle. So our shapes are made out of a bunch of different lines, right? Or line segments. So over here we have a line segments forming a rectangle. I'm going to go ahead and extend these lines to kind of see if we can find parallel lines in this rectangle. So if I were to take this line right here at the very top and I was extend this on forever, I know it's not very straight, right? And then I was going to go ahead and do the same thing on the bottom. Sorry guys, that's not very straight. But if I do it on the bottom, these two would be parallel lines. My red lines would be parallel lines. Rectangles also have another set of parallel lines, right? Because if I look over here on this side, that line is parallel to this line on the other side of my rectangle. Right? So rectangles have two sets of parallel lines. It has two sets of lines that will never, ever, ever touch. All right, let's go ahead and look at perpendicular lines. So remember, perpendicular lines are a type of intersecting line, meaning that they are going to meet. And those are lines that need to meet at 90 degrees. So that means they need to make a corner wherever they meet, right? So right here, we have a 90-degree angle. So this is a perpendicular line, or kind of to the best of my ability. I'm not doing a great job drawing them. Those are perpendicular lines. Now, if they meet like this, that is not a perpendicular line because this angle right here, that is not 90 degrees, right? It's not a corner. It doesn't look like a corner. These corners are not, these angles are not either. So they need to look like a corner. They need to be exactly 90 degrees to be a perpendicular line. Now, again, we can see this in shapes as well. So let's go back. Let's go back and look at our same rectangle. So our rectangle has some perpendicular lines as well. So let's see if we can go ahead and find them. So over here, at this corner, if I were to extend this line over here, and I were to extend this line over here, over here, I see I have a corner angle, right? So right there is our set of perpendicular lines. Those are corner angles. I can see some also over here in this corner. If I extend that line, and if I extend that line, or that line segment, we're going to see a corner angle over there. We're also going to see a corner angle over in this corner. We see perpendicular lines over there. And then last but not least, I also see some perpendicular lines along this corner, right? So a rectangle has 4 sets of perpendicular lines, or lines that cross at different points. Okay? All right, fantastic. Let's go over our lesson objective. So our lesson objective for today is we identified parallel and perpendicular lines. All right, well, I hope this was helpful. I hope you had a great time learning about parallel and perpendicular lines with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.